Beatriz, welcome to La CONVO. I'm super excited to have you here with us. First ever live stream. So
I feel
if
honored.
something happens,
I feel honored.
I guess we'll find out. We'll find out if this thing worked. I don't know.
Give us some
We'll
grace
find
if
out
something
after
happens.
the fact, right? If something worked. But when you and I started talking about having this conversation, I know it was really important for you to, as you shared with me, is to really make it around this really important day. I was gonna say celebration, but it's not celebration. No, it's the opposite. Yeah, exactly.
Sí.
Observance. It's a moment to reflect, a moment to what do we do around Latina Equal Pay Day. And that I would think was such an important way for us to sort of a moment to pause, to chat, to check in on kind of where we are, how we're doing as an industry, maybe as a society, and get into all that. But before we do, whenever I think of you, there's a phrase, Beatriz, so people that know you would know what I'm about to say. Whenever I hear it, like I can only think of you, right? Because you've said it so many times, and I wanted to start with that. So I remember the first time you said this, but when you hear the phrase, or when you say the phrase, calladita te ves más bonita. What does that mean to you?
So much to unpack there. I am a older generation Mexican immigrant, and I grew up hearing my mom and my abuelita say, "Mijita, calladita te ves más bonita," and they would do this, with their finger on their mouth, like, be quiet. And they were from another generation too, right?
Sure.
So, be quiet, be grateful for whatever you're given, and keep your head down and do the work. And that's it. Like, that is your role. And I think that when you come to a different country also, where you're also afraid you don't want to be seen. You don't want your voice to stand out. You don't want, it's like, be less. Don't be too much. And unfortunately, I was born with a personality that, is loud.
It didn't fit very well to that narrative.
I fought my mom and my abuelita and my tías on this whole, like, calladita te ves más bonita. I was always like, no, calladita no me veo más bonita.
Right.
And I think it really ties to today, to Latina Equal Pay Day, right? You're like, how is it possible? For me, first of all, I learned about this 10 years ago from Monica Ramirez, who is an incredible Latina activist. And she wanted to bring this visibility to Latina Equal Pay because all women are not paid equally in this country, but Latinas are on the bottom of the list. Right? So first, the Asian community, the women in the Asian community are closer to pay parity than white, than Black, then Indian American, and then it's us, right? At the very bottom. And I keep thinking, is there really somebody who wakes up in the US thinking, how do we pay Latinas
Today I'm going to
less?
underpay Latinas.
Like, I just find it difficult. And I understand that there's a lot to really fix, right? When it comes to legislation and things that need to be better. But I also wonder how much is on us on those cultural stories that we heard growing up and that are deeply ingrained in our minds and our hearts that we bring with us as we migrate to these countries, right? So I feel that the calladita te ves más bonita is not just something that, we grew out of it when we became older, but it's still in us when you think about work, when you think about how we use our voice, when we think about asking for what we deserve. It's almost like, and it happens to me, I almost feel like I'm letting my mom down, my abuelita down. Like, I am not living up to the expectation that I should be a quiet and grateful girl, right? Or woman at this point, obviously. So there's a conflict there, I think.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, right? Because so much of that we just described, it's a cultural thing. I think being humble in general is a core, I call it almost tenet of Latino culture, right? And it serves really well, right?
Yes,
in terms of what we
do.
It's a beautiful thing.
Humble
it's a combination
and
of gratefulness, hardworking, humility. But when the first time I heard you say that, it's the kind of thing like when you hear something and it's not something that is like inside directly affects you, you don't think much of it. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard that thousands of times, but I never really thought about it the way that you said it. This idea that for women, like we're literally telling them to like not stir the pot, not say anything, stay quiet in the corner. And this is coming from our loved ones.
Yes.
From the people that want the best for us. Not They're not trying to like screw us over something, but screw us in the process is the opposite of that. And yeah, I can only imagine hearing that over and over again, that it does create this internal battle of, how do I make sure that I'm living up to the ideals, the vision that my parents had. Even though I know now as an adult that it may be not exactly what it should be, but it still has to be like an internal conflict, right?
And I used to think that this was older generations, right? Like I'm not going to tell my daughter, calladita te es más bonita,
right?
God forbid. But I was giving this conference in DC a few years back, and it was only middle school and high school girls, primarily Black and Latina girls. And I was talking to them, and there was a big auditorium. It was probably 10,000 girls. And I remember saying, I hope none of you grew up hearing this phrase that I grew up hearing. And I started to say the word calla, and the whole auditorium repeated it loudly.
Wow.
And that broke my heart.
Yeah.
Because, wow, like we're in, I don't know, at that time, maybe 2022. Sure. And the fact that these girls are still
hearing
this. So this is not a boomer thing that died. Mm-hmm. This is something that is prevalent in our community. And I do feel that, and I have an example that I think you and I talked about also when we both worked at Me Too. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's no way that we pay Latinas less here. How could, never. Not on my watch.
Not on my watch.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And obviously, neither you as CEO or me as president and CEO thought, oh, let's pay Latinas less and let's pay Latinos more, because Latinos do make more than Latinas. This is not just it's a definitely gender thing within our own community as well. And when I tried to renegotiate the deals with Latinas and Latinos in our office, Latinas were always grateful. So when I was trying to bring them up to the level that the men were in their same, whether they were a director, a vice president, a coordinator. And every time I would say, listen, you're going to be promoted. You're now going to have this job. The first thing out of their mouth was, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I promise to work harder. I was like, whoa. Like, I'm not asking you to work harder. Right. You work hard enough.
You already work hard. That's
you
why I'm having this conversation.
Yeah. Cut to the men. It was a fierce negotiation. Yeah. It's like, no, like, wait a second. And how about a bonus? I'm in a mid-year review. And can I have flexible hours? Before, working from home was a thing. They were negotiating flexible hours. And I thought, wow, we really have a lot to learn. But no Latino men grew up hearing calladito te ves más bonito. Right? Like, you're the guy, you are strong, you negotiate, you go out there. But for the girl, a ver, sírvele a tu hermano. A ver, do this. Yeah. We are we're here to serve. Yeah. We're here to nurture. We're here to support. So when you go into the workforce and now you're like, no, you're here to lead. You're here to negotiate. You're here. Mm-hmm. There is sort of like this, like, intellectually that you should do this, but emotionally, there's just something that you think, is this really what I should be doing? And there's a conflict. I have it all the time, still to this day. I don't think I show it.
Yeah.
But my stomach hurts every time I have to negotiate.
Right, which you could only imagine all those micro decisions that happen in your day-to-day life. And you're a very accomplished person. If you feel that way, imagine the person that is whatever at the very beginning of their career and been hearing this the entire life. Although one thing I would say that you mentioned about the different Latino men and women, I would say I never heard, of course, something like "Caída te ves más bonito" or anything like that. Having said that, I do think the sentiment of gratefulness was a really big one, or to not be what would be the word, like
show-offy.
Not be show-offy, to be, and even like the thought, I remember having a conversation like this that I had with my parents. I can't remember the very specifics of it, but something like along the lines of like, well, you should be happy. You should be happy that they that they offer you they offer this, that this is great. Like,
amazing.
Don't be ungrateful. That's what it was. Don't be ungrateful.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of like, well, I'm not being me asking for a raise, me looking for a way to get promoted is not being ungrateful for what I have. It's simply an opportunity to continue to go up. And so I think there's even a version of that Latino, at least I got, I can't believe that I don't think I'm unique in that sense, that does play a role in the back of your mind, right?
Yes.
And even that for myself, I would say the way that it reflected for me is like, when it comes to compensation, I always like defer that conversation. Like, it works itself out. Like, let's focus, because I'm like, the work is the work. Like, work hard, do that. Yeah. Everything else
work
comes.
Hard, keep your head down, don't make any waves, and be grateful.
Right. Well, it's not even about not making waves. I'm more like work really hard, and then that is what actually propels you, which is good and bad, because there's people that are great negotiators, and that's what they do. And what do they say? The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yes.
And there's something associated with that. So to that point, though, Beatriz or Bea, right, I call you Bea. So Bea, so that point, Bea, when you think about this gap, really part of the reason why we're talking today, which, by the way, I actually looked at the report that the Justice for Migrant Women put together, and what I found was most interesting is that gap, it had for Latina women like 54 cents to $1 for, I think it was like white males, I think what it was, right? And then, really interesting, for immigrant women, it had a 43 cents versus white male. Okay, that makes sense. But the one that shocked me was for professional Latina women, 39 cents for every dollar. Like,
and did you see the Honduran and Guatemalan women?
I did not know.
29 cents to the dollar. 29 Mexican women. I think also not every country of origin had the whole calladita te ves más bonita, keep your head down, right? Because Argentinian women are like in the 80 percentile of the, right? Mexicans 30. We're like, sí, señor, sí, claro, como So it's very interesting to see, because there's a lot to unpack.
You wrote an article about this a couple of years ago, like the hidden cost of education, I think we called it.
That is what is
So talk to a little bit about
crazy.
That. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, and I was looking at the data, which is heartbreaking for me, because you look at somebody who is a bartender or a waitress, and the wage gap is actually much smaller than if you look at a judge, an attorney, a CEO in our community. So the more educated you are, it doesn't mean that, okay, you make X amount of dollars, but percentage wise, obviously CEOs make a lot more than bartenders. So that gap widens. That is why the more educated, where you should be making more money, the gap becomes wider.
I mean, it's interesting. I think it makes sense in the context. Well, it makes sense because I can understand it. Not that I'm saying that it's the right thing to do.
No.
But in some of these roles, CEO, CMO, just a range of how much a CEO can make, depending on the size of company, industry, like that's a pretty wide range within itself. But it is very disappointing to hear that you don't, that the inverse doesn't actually happen. I would think that the correlation would be is the more educated, the less the gap would be. But when that gap is actually wider, then it gets into all these other factors that you're kind of touching on. There's a cultural aspect that I think,
for sure.
And I gotta imagine when you talk about that, it has to be a little bit controversial, no? Like, because in some ways you're saying there's an aspect that we own ourselves.
Yes.
About where we are within. Talk a little bit about that.
It's controversial because, for people who have been doing this advocacy work for so many years, the progress that has been made is really extraordinary when you see, this law passed, and now you're able to have these rights that 10 years ago, it wasn't even in the conversation. Mm-hmm. However, when you say, we thought the big equalizer here was education, and you're like, no. The more educated you are, the less money you're going to make, theoretically, percentage-wise, right? And it's not all on. That's why I gave that example of when I sat with these female executives, except for one of them who, there's always an outlier who was like, I deserve 10 times more, and good for her. But, there is something on us. And people say it should not be on Latinas, right? I saw a lot of videos today where it's like Latinas are doing everything right. And that is correct. And I support that. But while legislation changes, while all these laws pass, I do think that there's a conversation to have with our Latinas in our community and say, why are you feeling this way? How can you change that? The generation of your abuelita and your mom was very different. They just came to this country. They wanted to be more invisible. Like, that is not you today in the workforce. That is non-serving to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always a controversy there of saying the onus should not be on the Latina. It should be that the laws protect us and everybody makes the same.
For sure.
And if you look at the data from unions, for example,
mm-hmm.
women, including Latina women who work in unionized jobs, make 22% more money, right? I was in a union when I started my career. I worked at Televisa in Mexico,
mm-hmm.
and there was a tabulador, right? Like a chart where you would be like, okay, reportera, you were the reporter,
every type of role,
$10,
mm-hmm.
and you add it up and you know exactly how much. Now, if you were famous or an actress or whatever, you get other perks, right? A bonus, a car, a house, whatever it might be. But the pay was the pay, the basic pay. It was so hard for me to understand that in this country it was so secret. And now I think, a lot of what's happened with us wearing our T-shirts and posting is don't be afraid to ask, right? Like, I ask a lot of my male friends who are not Latinos too. And sometimes it works because I've asked them, well, listen, I'm thinking of charging this. And they're like, no, charge more. And then when I send my proposal, they're like, oh my God, she was so expensive. And I think, oh my God, this is crazy, because the expectation is you'll be able to pay her less. So there's a lot of work that we still have to do.
There's that culture piece as well around, bueno, bonito y barato, right? That you want it fast, you want it cheap and beautiful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Or great, right? How you want to look at it. And I think when you think about going back to what is it going to take, what is it going to continue to take, it's a lot. There is a cultural aspect that we get to influence at minimum, or at least have those conversations with our parents, with our kids, right?
Yes.
To your point, like you wouldn't tell that to your kids. And it's something that unfortunately it is part of our culture, but we have to talk about it to help change that perspective, because for other cultures, they don't view the world that way. It doesn't make them bad in any way. So as a matter of fact, that's the reason why they're getting these opportunities. But besides that, like yourself as a CEO, how do you think about what needs to actually happen to address this at a bigger scale? You talked about policy already. Like what are other things that I think need to be done?
I think that the most important, obviously, awareness is a start, and we've done a lot of that now. But I do think that changing the conversation into involving other allies to understand that Latinas getting paid less, or any demographic, any other women who do get paid less, actually affects the American economy as a whole. Okay. Right. So I always say, when Latinas are not paid equitably, America loses. Why is that? Because in the 40-year professional career of a Latina or of a woman, Latinas specifically are going to miss out on making $1.3 million, okay, on an average. So you think about that, $1.3 million. Let's just think about taxes, right?
Sure.
A third of that in taxes, 400 and something in change. Okay, $433,000 that we could contribute to schools, public schools, that we could contribute to hospitals, that we could contribute to parks. Those aren't just for Latinos.
Sure.
Those are for everybody. Right. So our contribution already, just by taxes, and that is something that where you're like, we all lose because the contributions that we can make. Also, we know Latinas are the ones who make 90% of the purchasing decisions in a household, right? So whatever we buy, if we had more money, obviously, for me, it would be better to invest it than to buy more.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
But let's just say in the economy in general, right, would have more of our money, which is
it's just an overall loss in economic productivity, no matter how you look at it.
Right. But for us as Latinos, can you imagine $1.3 million invested?
Yeah.
We close the wealth gap.
Yeah.
We would absolutely close the wealth gap. So I do think that what needs to change is sort of like really bringing more people into this conversation of saying, wait a second, actually, we're all losing when women in general are not paid equitably. So more than, no, it's que you owe us. And I know my t-shirt says you still owe us after all these years. But more than you owe us is we are all missing out, right? America is losing because we are losing as well.
Yeah.
And I think if we...
It's almost like a more inclusive messaging, right? That we have to fix this together to make to really capture the value of the productivity that we as a society are creating.
Right.
And when a big aspect, when, fast forward to all the women, not just Latina women, are being undervalued, better, we're undervalued, then we as a society lose in that process.
Right.
So it's policy, it's culturally, as individuals. I think it's leadership in organizations making the tough decisions on a day-to-day basis to actually look at this and to care.
To really audit that, right?
To audit it, to live by it, and it's hard.
It's hard because you're oh, if I could save here, then I have this money to spend here. But to your point, it's really, if one thing changes, not everything changed, right? So it starts at home.
Yeah.
Moms, do not tell your girls, calladita te ves más bonita. Like we have to stop that, right? Like that is not okay. That is not serving for this generation. So that part, no. Yes, of course, policy. Yes, our allies. Yes, our employers. Like, are you doing those yearly audits when are you coaching the women in your organization, whether they're Latinas or not, and saying, no, like this is how much this job that you're doing pays, right? Or this is how you should have. We're happy that you're grateful. We're happy that you want to work harder.
Yeah.
However, one question would be, what is the pay? Is this what my male colleagues make for this role? Ask them. Like there's so much that we could be doing together to move this forward, but it has to be a collective effort.
It does. And I think having the right people also at the right levels to bring the awareness is super important. By the way, it's a big part of your story. I know we kind of like glossed right over your story, but you're at this point a serial entrepreneur. You've launched multiple companies. I saw, I don't know if it was your bio or somewhere that said that you have raised over 60 million in capital. I think it's more than that now. It's more than that, I'm pretty sure.
But I have a funny story.
Board member, like talk about how you went from, I think it was like a radio DJ at 15 years old or 16 years old, to being a producer, to being a media executive, to now being a tech entrepreneur. Like that's quite a trajectory.
Well, sure, that's what you read in the bio. But I wanna, and you know how it is, right?
Yeah.
It's so many ups, so many downs. But I want to take you back a little bit more of something that's not in my bio that I was reflecting on the other day. And that's why I was laughing when you were like, okay, tell us about your background. My parents used to, like any Latinos, I think, throw these carne asadas at our house all the time. People didn't even get an invitation. They knew that on Sundays they could show up at my parents' house and there's like carne and rajas and frijoles and beans. And it's going to be popping.
Show up.
So I just thought, wow, this is like a really great gathering of like angel investors. Obviously, when I was 8 years old, 6 years old, I didn't think about that. But I did think I have a big group of people here who are friendlies. So I would always, when people finish their meal, I would always think of something that I could do. Gymnastics, a little play, and then I would run into my mom's kitchen, bring the tortillero, where they put the tortillas, which looks like the thing that you pass in church, like for the donations. And I would pass it around to the guests. Okay. And I'd be like, donaciones. And my mom was mortified.
But you were asking donations for what?
I just entertained them. Like I did something, right? I did like some gymnastics routine or some little play with my Snoopy characters, whatever it was. And people would be like,
already
oh my
raising
gosh.
capital.
So
back in the day.
I really think that trained me, amigos. Because I'm thinking, I kind of enjoy raising capital, which is a little strange because people are like, oh my God, I have to raise capital. And it is rough. And it does humble you so much. But I feel like I've been training for a while, right? With that tortillero. And although I had to give it back, I still have to do the ask. I still have to show them whatever my product was that Sunday. But yeah, I mean, I think I was born with a lot of hustle in me. My parents were like, listen, in our house, we have a budget of X for tennis shoes or jeans So if you want the $40 Nike shoes, you need to work $20 more for them, right? Wow. Our budget is half.
Right.
And so since I was little, I was like making pies, cookies, selling them after school where my dad had his office, passing the tortillero around. I worked in radio. Radio is a fun story because I was in love with Ricky Martin and with Menudo, like every kid my age from that generation. And I truly thought that working in radio would let me meet him and then fall in love and marry him. You know how that ends.
Seems reasonable. Yeah.
Definitely did not work out for him or for me. But that's my radio origin story. Actually, I was just like, I had a plan for my life on how I would, marry this guy. And then from there, I started to do TV, which was Televisa Tijuana. I would do like the entertainment segment of the news.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed from a young age. I really enjoyed working, hustling, what was next for me. And my parents were not in this industry at all. So it wasn't something that, because my dad, was already a radio person. No, none of them. Right. They actually didn't love the idea of me doing entertainment by any means, but, they tolerated and supported it, but it wasn't their thing.
But it sounds like they were supportive of the entrepreneurial mindset that you kind of had from very early on.
My dad.
Or did they have a little bit of a hard time with that? Because
my mom to this day says this to me, and I hope she's not watching because she's going to be like, I cannot believe you said this about me. But my mom to this day, she's like, ay, mijita, yo le pido al Señor Jesucristo que encuentres un trabajo de verdad, right? Like I really beg
real job.
Jesus for you to get a real job. And I'm thinking, like, this is a real job. Like, but to her, it's just like, or she asks me like, ¿Cuándo vas a hacer tu maestría? I'm like, oh, never.
Yeah.
I never say never. But, it's definitely not in my roadmap to do my master's degree.
Not in your KPIs.
But it's a different generation. So for them, I wouldn't say her aspirations were, she's like, you're such a good negotiator. You could have been an attorney, right? You could have been a licenciada. And I'm like, I'm good. I like what I do. I think my dad, he was definitely like the OG girl dad, where he was just like, you could do anything, you could be anything you want.
That's great. Yeah.
So he was definitely supportive of anything, even crazy things of like, oh, I want to sing, or which I'm a terrible singer, or I want to, whatever it was, he was, there. My mom was very supportive too, but I feel like she was like, maybe something more traditional would be easier to understand.
Yeah.
I would say than entrepreneur, because that's tough.
It is tough.
That's tough.
No, obviously, I spent a little bit of time in the entrepreneur side. It's a challenge. When you think about now the startup ecosystem, what's your sense of where we are now of having an ecosystem that supports Latino entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Well, we're worse off than where we were a few years ago, unfortunately. Not to say that it's impossible to raise capital or it's impossible to grow a company and be successful by any means, but we saw a big boom a few years ago, as you know, to really support new fund managers, right? Fund managers that came from diverse backgrounds, diverse perspectives.
And you're referring to really post COVID,
yes.
George Floyd movement,
even around COVID, you could, when you and I worked together and we raised capital together, we never saw diverse fund owners, right? They were all the same guy, nice white guys. And we were grateful for the money they gave us. But it wasn't like we had a choice of somebody who, with their capital, they really understand our community, or they could understand maybe like what we were building and they could see the opportunity. But it wasn't people from our community. I don't even think we had a female investor. We didn't even have a woman on our board, if you think about it. It was just me. Maybe there was an observer from Verizon, but it wasn't even, right?
Yeah, but it was very small group of people. Yeah, 100%.
So there was a big push to say, okay, if we have the data that female CEOs really perform well with it, why aren't we placing this bet also on who is finding the entrepreneurs to support, no matter what the gender or what the race was? And so I feel like there was a moment where a lot of new fund managers with very different backgrounds were funded, right? Those LPs funded them, which are like the investors that invest in the funds.
Yeah.
And then these funds invest in the entrepreneurs. And why I'm saying that is because like you kind of have to understand. So there was a moment when all these new young investors that really understood the needs of our community had a good amount of cash to invest in. And so people from our community, for the first time, I think, had an opportunity to not have to overly explain or prove themselves to someone, because they were like, I get it and I want to invest. It was an incredible time. Now, cut to today, it's a hard climate for anybody to raise capital. So for entrepreneurs, it's hard because those fund managers are also having a harder time raising capital. Not to say that they won't be able to do it, but the capital is a bit more limited. The metrics on what you need to hit to be funded are so much higher, right? So before, if you had to have X revenue, now double that. If you needed to have so many users, double that. So the stakes are higher. It's harder to do. And it's not impossible again, but I wouldn't say, oh, this is our golden moment for Latino entrepreneurs to be getting the cash that, you know, historically has been very hard for us to get funding.
And even by category, it's changed, right? Because when you started SUMA Wealth as a fintech company, it was around a time where fintech itself was a really hot commodity. People were really looking at fintech companies. A lot of folks that came up, raised capital, and I think the challenge has been, and now you look around and a lot of those folks are no longer around.
No.
What has changed within fintech in either raising capital or just in general, those value propositions for companies that has made it so much more difficult, not just to raise, but for companies to actually stick around?
I think in fintech, and I'm going to talk about our space, which is more on the personal finance, personal management area, there were a lot of companies, but it was very hard for them. I don't think they came from backgrounds where they knew how to build community, how to build engagement. And it was very hard for them when they needed to scale. They had great products, many of them, some maybe not, but they focused a lot on the product, which is very normal, right? Yeah. When we launched, we focused more on building the brand, building the community, building the trust, which was an outlier. It was a little crazy. To
what people were expecting from you.
You're like, you're a fintech, so what's your product? We're like, no, well, our products are community. People are like, oh my God, this lady is crazy. But then when you fast forward to now, where very few of us survived, building community, building trust, really doing social listening on what does the community truly need, what are their pain points, and then building a product for that pain point and converting them, I think was a smarter idea than let me build on my own what I think people need without asking anyone. Then I'm going to try to test it and find product market fit. And then now I need a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars to acquire these customers. They didn't have a funnel with a community to just say, oh, you've been asking me for this. Here you go. And hopefully you can convert them. So I think that was something where VCs, which are these venture capitalists, thought, oh, okay, well, we can't just keep doing another round of funding to pay for that customer acquisition became very, very expensive. And I think, the industry, like anything, it chases whatever is the brightest thing. Sure. 10 years ago for you and I, it was digital media. Rightfully so, right? Yeah. I mean, Facebook didn't even have video. We had video. We had a whole network, right? With thousands of creators who were like, oh, you're so innovative. And people want to put money there because that is the next big thing. That is the thing that's going to disrupt. So that's going to be the next big unicorn. Then when they say, oh, this is going to be hard to monetize. Oh, this is going to be, okay, no, not so much. Digital media wasn't that hot. Fintech came to a place where it's like, what needs to be disrupted? At the time, it was media. Then it was like finance. Oh my God, people, banks. No. People want a neobank and they want their phone and let's put our money there. Today, obviously, you know what it is, right? Anything with AI. It's like AI. You put AI, people put in their decks. That's the thing so it's always happened. There's always that trend. But I think, as an entrepreneur, you have to say like, okay, what is real about this?
Sure.
Also be very careful that you're not going into this madness of, oh, let me get this valuation to be unreal. And then you get to a place where you can't back it up and
Right.
you're going to have to.
You can't catch up with it anymore.
You can't catch up with that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's tricky.
Yeah.
But
this dynamic that you mentioned is a really interesting conversation that, frankly, I had a lot with you over the years. This idea of product versus community. It's really interesting hearing you speak to it that way, especially in the context of other fintech offerings that never really quite got there or that resulted in like really high cost of audience acquisition. Do you think it's a function specifically when it comes to community-driven products that's even more important for Latino communities? Like this idea that people need trust, that people need that recommendation from each other, people need to, it needs to be in some ways a little bit more of a shared experience rather than a little more transactional. Is that like what plays a role within that conversation for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people now joke. So at the beginning, people were like, oh, she's crazy. Now people are saying, oh, community is a new product.
Right.
But I think that in our category, finance, that is definitely critical. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about financial institutions, and we work with mostly all financial institutions, they've had a hard time, not because of their fault, building the trust. Why? Again, all this cultural thing that we inherit and that we bring with us from our countries of origin, our parents, our grandparents, we all have stories. I have the story of my own parents so present in my mind of something happened in your country of origin. For my parents we lived in Tijuana. They had these bank accounts where they were told they're in US dollars. And one day, it's like, oh, there's a devaluation. There's no more dollars in the country. Yeah. And now that is 2 cents in pesos.
Yeah, people got wiped out 100%.
And so anything you tell my mom that she can trust, she's not going to trust. Mm-hmm. She already lost it all one time. Mm-hmm. So she's like, no, like I don't trust the banks. I don't trust este fulano que me estás presentando. Like, no, right? Like, no. She doesn't trust my financial advisor. She's like, no. And there's a reason for that. So I would say that community and trust is paramount if in certain areas. For us, trying to build a fintech, a wealth tech company platform, trust and community is key, right? And we go out of our way, as you know, to even be funny, to make it a little lighter, because people tense up when they think about money and where that came from and how they lost it and how they had to rebuild. So we try to show a shared experience. When we say things like 401k, right? Like people are like, what is that? People can laugh, but then it's like, oh my gosh, I don't get it either. And it's okay. And if you see others that could be a president of a company or it could be a student that don't understand and can laugh about it and have that shared experience, and you can solve for that, that is where I think, it's a bit of our secret sauce, where you build that emotional connection with the community, with each other, and you have to build that trust. Trust is very hard to build, as you know, is very easy to lose. Yeah. So for us, it's very, very important, even when we work with financial partners, that we are the ones who get to curate what products and services we really offer to our community. Mm-hmm. Because when somebody tells you, what do you trust? What can I trust? Where do I go? Where is this better than this? You need to really make sure that that answer is going to be as accurate as possible for them to really be able to build wealth, and not something that they're like, oh, wait a second, this was not good for me. Yeah. So I do think that in our industry, trust is paramount, community is paramount. It's just very, very, very important. And it's a competitive edge that we have, that I think that is why our financial institution partners, clients come to us.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about that. So when it came to SUMA Wealth, tell me a little bit more about what is the vision and what was some of the insights that you looked at that give you the confidence that you want to launch this company, go into this industry that, I mean, I got to give you tons of kudos, man, because you went from a digital media executive, right, digital media founder, to a fintech founder. Like that's a
crazy
big leap. Yeah, like
that's another crazy move.
Yeah, maybe tell me like what led to this, what started it, what was the vision?
So I had no intention of doing another startup. I had turned 50 and I thought, no, I'm going to, just really take a breath. My kids were a couple of years from going to college. I have twins. And I thought, I need this break more than ever. And then the pandemic hit. And looking into all this, and when things, como que todas las cosas se te ponen, like you're like, you have to pay attention. And that's exactly what happened. Anything I would read, anything I would see, anything was all related to finance. How people were like, oh my gosh, well, like, what is furlough? How do I apply for a PPP loan? Looking into this data of how we're amazing consumers, but we had on average $1,000 collectively as families on emergency savings. So people were not doing well in our, not only were we the ones who were dying the most with COVID, but we were the ones with the biggest economic hardship.
Yeah, least prepared, yeah.
And I just kept thinking, wow, can somebody do a meme and explain furlough, right? Like in a funny way, can somebody, and there comes my content background, right? And obviously we did a lot of memes, and me too. And it wasn't really my idea either. A friend of mine who is obviously a co-founder here, Javier Gutierrez, I don't know if you know him.
I do.
He had this idea for a long time of like, oh, maybe fintech for Latinos. And he thought that, and he was like, you're the perfect person because of your background in media. And I thought, how would I be the perfect person? Like, I know nothing about finance. I could not be a worse choice. And he tried to convince me, and I was like, absolutely not. But then the pandemic hit. I started to see all these things. I talked to a few investors, and they were like, oh, we heard that you might be launching I'm like, no, I'm not launching anything. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm very happy at home, making lunch for my kids. And I don't know. It was just like one thing led to another. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to give it a try and try something small and see. And I told the board and the investors, okay, I'm going to be here for a little while, just while I kind of build the brand and the idea. But then you have to bring in a CEO that comes from finance.
Right.
I'm still here after 5 years, but I'm still looking for that CEO.
Still working on it.
I'm still looking for that CEO. So anybody out there interested, hit me up on LinkedIn. But so it really wasn't something that I came up with or I had this desire, but it was very personal to me.
Right.
And obviously, our good mutual friend, who's a co-founder too, Mary Hernandez, very personal to her too. I lured her into this. She was like, no more startups. I'm like, no, but think about this one. Like, this is amazing. And with her background too, and just having to be that translator and Sherpa navigator for a family from a very young age. We're like, imagine if our parents and our abuelas had this education from an early age. Their situation would have been very different, right? So we have that opportunity now to do it with the next generation. And, we were, all in again into the crazy startup life, which is very roller coaster.
Yeah, it is.
People see the Instagram and the LinkedIn. And I was just talking to two founders last week, and both Latinas who are amazing. And I said, oh, I saw that you guys launched in Mexico, and I saw that you're killing it. And then their answer from both is like, and we're killing ourselves in the process, right? So yes, whatever we post is, we should post also the days where we're like, we are absolutely exhausted because startup is hard. Again, going back to the cultural stuff, you're still a mom, a wife, a daughter. Like, there's so many other roles aside of being a CEO or a founder or raising capital that you fill, that there are days that you are like, I don't know how to survive this, and you gotta kind of just take a deep breath and keep going. And I think we should show that side as well. The no's when you raise capital, not just like, oh my gosh, you've raised 70 million. There's a lot of no's. There's a lot of moments when you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna run out of cash soon and something has to happen. I mean, there's a lot that we don't show that we should. So anyway,
it's a big
but
part
here
of it.
we are in el hustle.
100%. In terms of that vision of what you set out to do when you were contemplating this idea versus what it is now, what's been the change, the progress?
Yeah, so we wanted to build a fintech, wealth tech company that felt very fun, that felt very accessible to our community. And I think we've done that. But in the process, we've learned that 70% of our users, which is the majority, are also solopreneurs, micropreneurs, side hustlers. Tienen su chambita por aquí. And so what's changed is that now our offer, or our new offer that we're building now, aims to support them as well. How do we help them not just manage their personal finances, but how to grow their small businesses? So we're very excited about that. We're very excited about that we get to live in this day and age where technology is not what it was 2 years ago. And now, obviously, with hyper personalization because of AI, we could do scale, but also make you feel that this is only for you.
You're now in the AI game as well.
Yes, yeah, we are. Everybody, yes, amigos. Come on. And so,
but you launched your own agent, right? Like your own agent.
Yes, our agent is live, so we're very excited. So, because our app had so much data, people connect their accounts, so and you can see so much of everything you've spent and trends. And so for some people who are data geeks, that is incredibly exciting. For other people, it's a little bit too much, right? It's like, just give me the insights. So having an agent that it's like, okay, Jesus, like, we have people who are like, can I afford to go see Bad Bunny in Puerto Rico?
No, you cannot afford to.
No, we say, okay, let's look at this, right? Can you commit to 2 no spend days for the next 2 months? Could you commit to this? Can you
I like that.
And we are never the ones who say no. Because for that, you have a lot of people, right? That's why people love ChatGPT, because it's so positive. It always says you can do it, right? Si se puede. So we want to keep that spirit responsibly. So I'm like, okay, let me tell you how you could do it, right? Buy your tickets and put your hotel in this credit card that you have that has a 0 interest rate for the next 12 months. Do not put it on this card that you have a high interest rate or that you already have it maxed and it's going to affect your credit score. So we'll do all the coaching. We'll say we're going to adjust your budget. We're going to work with you every day to make sure that responsibly todavía puedes darte tus lujitos, ¿no?
Right.
And so that we have it with agents. So we're very, very excited about that. But we're taking it a step further now with our banking partners as well, where we're like, we want to prove out that coaching can actually reduce the default rate of loans. It could actually, instead of, somebody missed a payment, it's a little too late. If every day you are looking at what are those triggers between the balances, between them making sure that they're getting paid, that their cash flow is there, how much can that be prevented, right? And obviously it's a win-win because banks want to protect their portfolio of loans, but you're also supporting those small businesses or those customers personally into being successful with their finances. So a few things, I don't think anything regarding the spirit, because we always said we want to be a very community-driven wealth tech, fintech company that helps you in that journey. We want to be that family member that is fun, that is supportive, but that it's smart with their finances. I didn't have one growing up like that. So we want to make sure that this agent could become that. And something super fun also that we do is, because we say, we want to build it in a culturally relevant way. And people are like, what is that? What does that mean? And you and I have had this conversation, right? What does that be? Okay. Well, we want to make sure that your agent, for example, if my agent sees that I have a doctor's appointment for my mom at 3:00 in the afternoon, I want the agent to ask me if it should reschedule my 5:00, because it's going to know that after that, I'm going to need to go to the pharmacy and pick up this. I'm going to need to, like, you are in it, or it understands that your business is mostly cash, or it understands that you are also managing the finances for a few other family members, or that you support your older family members with their rent or their mortgage. So it plans for you, right? So it's like something that would be so generic that's not for our culture. I don't think it would know. It has that lived experience to understand what are the things that are very personal to us. So that's what we mean.
So that's interesting, because it's the whole, by the way, you reminded me, because I was seeing this video that Natalia showed me on from SNL. They did a Chat GPT.
Yes.
And it was with Bad Bunny. So if you think of that, maybe maybe that's for the next version of SUMA's.
Yes, exactly.
SUMA's bot, or SUMA's agent. But this idea about building culture forward businesses, super important. And it's been a core part of what you do and what you've done now with SUMA. How does that actually manifest itself in the strategy, the product, the content? Like, what does that mean in real life and practice, being culture forward? How do you guys have that reflect in what you're doing?
I mean, I think even from my media days, we chose a demo within our community that was very unseen, which was the young US-born, English-dominant Latinos. And we see a tremendous opportunity, right? So obviously, whether it's media or now it's fintech, is what do they need? What are they not getting? Even though they speak English, and many people think, well, if they speak English, why aren't they with Robinhood? Why aren't they on Mint? Why aren't they? And when I talk to the CEOs of those companies, they're like, it's incredibly hard for us to acquire these young Latinos. So for us, what it means is that we are able to obviously identify something that could be incredibly lucrative. We hope that we, at the same level, help them build wealth, and it's lucrative for us. We are a certified B Corp, so we care a lot about the impact that we make as well. But it really means like identifying an opportunity within our demo, because people automatically would assume, oh, let's build this for more immigrant Latinos who are sending. There's so many companies sending money homes and do remittances. We're like, let's look at where it's fully underserved. So this is a demo that we know well. And then really understanding, like, what are they missing? What do they need? Where are they at? How can we disrupt in a way, right? With Me Too, we wanted to disrupt the way people did not get opportunities in entertainment, right? With a culture forward company. What it meant, now you have a phone, you have an opportunity. And we build that whole company around that. With finance, it's the same. We want to make sure that we are building something that is exactly for you, for the stage that you are. We know that you are that Sherpa for your parents. We know that you're managing the finances. We know you're mortified to manage their finances because you don't even know how to manage yours. So how could we be supportive, understanding all those things that happen to you at home, sometimes even making fun of them in a way, and making you feel very emotionally connected to us. And that's why I think the engagement is very high, the loyalty is very high. And that's where I love to sort of, in that space is where I love to build.
That's kind of where the magic happens, right?
I think so. I mean, you know, because think about that generation. It's like, oh, well, you know, think about the No Sabo kids, right?
Yeah.
They're incredibly, we had a lot of those working for us years ago, where I would ask like, hi, hola, and they're like, hi. ¿Cómo te fue el fin de semana? Fine. You know, I was like, okay. But they loved working with, they loved the culture. They loved the
100%.
Mexican candy. They loved that we put culture first. Right. It wasn't a checkbox. It wasn't, oh, this is the Latino initiative back in the supply closet with no this is like all we do, live and breathe is the culture here. So obviously it manifests in everything. In the product, in how we show up, in everything is that. And I don't know, I just think that is amazing that you have the privilege to build something like that and to make a whole generation feel that they belong.
I think that's really exciting, and I can't wait for when you write the book over that story. And it should be something along the lines of at the intersection of culture and disruption, because I think that speaks to a lot of what your career has been, which has been very exciting, and I've had the privilege to be there to see, at least part of it.
I love that we've gone to work together, and you've been a key inspiration to me, and also a good challenger. I remember our conversations when you were like, no, in a way, challenging me as like, okay, maybe that was bad English, but challenging me and thinking like, you were like, but why don't you lean into the things you're already so good at? Do you remember that conversation that we had one time? And you're like, oh, and now you went to launch a fintech company. I was just like, no, but I see that there's something here that has a lot of pain and a lot of opportunity. To your point of the disrupt, finance was ready to be disrupted. Media was ready to be like, there are a lot of things. I mean, if you think about AI and personalization, that too, because who has programmed that AI? It hasn't been us.
100%.
Right. So even when we started at SUMA and we were doing, I don't know, images and things like that, and you would be like Latina CEO, and it would give you an image that it's embarrassing to repeat what the image was. At least we have that opportunity to train it, to program it, to
be part of it.
To be a part of it. Exactly.
Listen, we could go for a while, but unfortunately we're kind of coming towards the end of it.
Okay.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on two final points.
Okay.
Clearly, with the success you had, with the career that you had, what are some lessons that you can share to folks that may be on their way up? I know you get this a lot. A lot of people call you and for mentorship and to ask you questions. What is something that you would share with folks about things that you've learned and being able to do these pivots, jump into these new areas of opportunity, and build these companies in such a brave manner? I would say, just going in there.
Crazy person. I would say, whether you're an entrepreneur and building a company or not, just my favorite piece of advice that I did somehow by instinct, but it's definitely helped me a lot, is build your social capital. Okay. And I remember the first time I heard that from somebody who was like, oh yeah, of course you raise capital easy. And of course everybody wants to, invite you, whatever, because you have such a high social capital. And I was like, Googling social capital. So after Googling and understanding what it was, it's like, I get it. Like, show up for people, right? Yeah. Like, if you show up for people, if you give, everybody has something to give. My dad would always say that. Everybody has something. That doesn't mean that it has to be a lot of money or a lot of, but something.
Right.
But you build, people want to see you win when you have supported them in that journey too, right? And it's not that you're going to give because, then it's going to give me back. And even if you believe in like law of attraction or the universe or being a good person, but building social capital, I feel that is one of the best things that you can do to really just advance in your, there's always someone willing to help you. There's somebody willing to give you capital, to mentor you, but you have to do the work too. You can't just be a taker. You have to be a giver as well. Right. At whatever level you can. I think that is a really important lesson that I
would say, as someone who's directly benefit from that from you, you are very kind with your network. You're very, very kind to share, contact, connection, make introductions, and I always appreciate it. So you do live by what you say.
No, I think it's important, and also for as a community, right? Like, nobody's coming to save us. Nobody has ever handed us things that we don't deserve. Like, we've had to hustle for what we have. So as a community, we should be coming together. We should be supporting each other. We should be making those connections, those phone calls, sending those emails for others, because that's all we've got.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Final thing. What's one big prediction from you that you see next 5 years, 10 years in your industry and kind of across the board? What do you think?
Okay, 10 years and beyond, I'm going to say, finally, I know we've heard this many times, like, now is our time for Latinos. But when you look at demographics alone, when you look at 80% of the new workforce going into the workforce now is Latino, we are going to be those. We are going to be leading so many things that we haven't. And I think that our kids and our grandkids are going to have incredible opportunities. We'll finally be the CEOs. We'll finally be the heads of networks and studios. And I think that's amazing. My goal in this lifetime is to accelerate that. So that's why I do the work that I do. Yeah. But by default and by demographics alone, it'll be a really great time. On the short term, I would say a big prediction is like everybody now has an email. Everybody will have an AI agent or a digital twin. And hopefully, people will be able to do more of the things that are more human and that you enjoy more. And you'll be able to leave the automatic, more tedious tasks to your digital twin or to your agent. But I know it sounds like, an agent or so far away. I think it's closer than anybody thinks. And we're going to see so much of that. I mean, so much of that is going to come into our lives. And hopefully we are smart enough to own that, right? Own our agents, train our agents, and be able to charge from our own agents instead of having this fear of I'm going to be replaced by an agent. So we hope to at SUMA to be able to guide a lot of our entrepreneurs and also in personal finance and how you could do that best to take advantage of that and not the other way around.
Sure. For people that want to learn more about SUMA Wealth, where should they go?
So our website is a great place, sumawealth.com. To find me or anything that I'm doing, I post a lot of what we do with the company or with my own foundation on LinkedIn. So that's always a really good place to connect with me personally.
Great. Well, Beatriz, thank you so much for joining us on this Latina Equal Pay Day. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. 6 seconds left.